Good morning, homeschool mamas. Let's chat boundaries in our homeschool. If you are where I live, I am in British Columbia, Canada. I know that most of you are somewhere across Canada, and then there's a handful of you that are in the United States. Well, bear with us if you're not in Canada, because in Canada we're going through, a lot. There's a lot going on right now with COVID restrictions. People have varying experiences, but it definitely is playing out on our mental health space. And I'm seeing that pop out like kernels of popcorn. Everybody's experiencing it in some form or fashion. And so today's discussion, though it is about boundaries, and I'm going to focus it on homeschooling, I am planning for next week to have a discussion about how to do this again with our kids, creating routines and boundaries and really practices that are going to help us to get through this. I'm with you. It's really hard. I don't like it. I don't want it. None of us do, but this is it. So let's face it and get through it together. If you have questions, if you have tips that you want to share or something that really is helping you right now, please tell me, because I'm going to share it with other people that really need it right now. But let's get back to the discussion about boundaries in our homeschools. I'm going to give you a very quick list of possibilities to include in your homeschool. I know that we're all different. We all have self-care needs that are really different because we're different people. But these are things that I have used in my homeschool. It's not an exhaustive list. I've been working on posts this week that definitely include all the different things that I do, most of the different things that I've done over the years, and how that has helped me and my kids in our homeschool. I'm going to tell you that I discuss all of this in my Homeschool Mama Retreat, which is a course that I'm about to release in a few weeks right at Mother's Day. I'm really excited to tell you that I have a very special gift for you and for me. For 5, 6, 7 days, I think I have 7 Homeschool Mama mentors that are going to go live with me and chat about the most pertinent areas of need or discussion with us about the things that we need the most, like things like patience and all of the stuff that you're thinking about. I'm trying to include a little bit of all of that in our discussions. If you want to make sure that something that you're especially grappling with right now is included in that discussion, throw it in the comments section and I'll make sure it's included. But that's going to happen the week before Mother's Day. I ask you to share it wide with friends. These are some really seasoned, very just close to my heart kind of people that are able to engage in conversation in a way that's real, and also they've had a lot of years in sharing their experiences, not only experiencing them, but also knowing how to share it with other people. So I've got that. But let's get into boundaries. Boundaries. How does that manifest in your homeschool? Well, for me, there's a few things that I need. I learned very quickly I needed quiet. Like, not quiet all the time, although some days premenstrually, yes. But mostly I needed quiet at times in the day. How to do that? There's so many ways to find quiet, and there are seasons that it's a much more difficult thing to do, to find quiet with your homeschool kids. Maybe creating times in the afternoon when you're doing a homeschool quiet time, or maybe you're doing it in the morning routine, maybe you're doing it after dinner. There's so many possibilities in how to do that. I've got a special post that's devoted just to finding quiet in your homeschools. Now, what about finding time alone? Absolutely no question, this is going to be a really tough time to find time alone. I've even had that discussion with someone last year in, I think it was the first wave with the first set of restrictions, and how to find time alone. We need time alone at some point. And since going to the grocery store isn't an option for everybody right now, it can't be to the grocery store. But I wouldn't have recommended it anyways, because going to the grocery store as a mom, that's not fun. That's not your alone time. Hanging out with cans of peas and beans, this is not fun. So the goal in an ideal homeschool scenario is to have some time alone to make sure that you actually just connect in with yourself at times throughout. Maybe if you have a chance to do it once a week, if it's just 15 minutes, it will help you. 1 hour a week, gold. No matter what amount of time you can get alone, it has value. Even if you want to spend time with your kids all the time and you just can't get enough of them, you still need time alone at times. Alter our expectations. In certain seasons, we simply cannot create certain boundaries with our kids the same way that we could if they were 18. A 2-year-old does not clue into the idea that when I said, please don't interrupt me on the toilet, I really mean it. And so we have to alter our expectations that sometimes our boundaries aren't going to be enacted the way that we want to because little kids just can't honor it. You need your own thing, something that is outside of your homeschool thing. A boundary of separateness is what I call it. Just to recognize that you are a separate human being with separate needs, that you have a separate identity, separate interests, that you're going to be somebody outside of the homeschool mom role someday. So daily separateness practice, if you can do that for 5-10 minutes. You need to recognize your areas of overwhelm. I posted specifically on 19 tips this week to recognize overwhelm and how to engage overwhelm. There is no doubt that overwhelm and doubt seem to be the most common 2 discussion points that I've come across when talking with homeschool families, obviously. Overwhelm in so many different packages, but we need to be able to sit with our feelings to recognize actually how we're feeling and why we're feeling what we're feeling, actually understand what our underlying needs are under those feelings, and then begin to address them. Sometimes we come into homeschooling with this notion that we're just going to do all the things for our kids because that's why we're doing this, right? We want to equip them with everything. And so we're on top of everything, or at least we're considering everything. We're researching everything. And we're spending a lot of time doing everything and forgetting that we are human beings that are humans that have needs just like our kids do. Maybe they're not the same needs. Hopefully we've matured a little bit more than our own kids, but we still have needs. We need to have our needs satisfied just like them. And our needs sometimes manifest in uncomfortable feelings. We feel uncomfortable. I like to call them uncomfortable. Some people will call them negative, but the reality as a human is we all have those feelings, so why call them negative? They're just our reality. We are uncomfortable with certain feelings on the regular in our homeschools. What is that feeling that you identify? When I first say that, what's the first thought that you have? I know for me, for many years, and this is just me because we all have different experiences, but I felt frustrated. And I know that that feeling of frustration or anger is usually the tip of the iceberg. In that, under the iceberg, under the water, not under the iceberg, under the water is a much larger section of iceberg. And it usually is not anger. There's something else going on under there. Unmet needs. Maybe you feel sad by something, or you feel like something's just not the way it was supposed to be. Whatever you're feeling under the anger, that's the thing that you want to address. You want to address the need of that. So that could be many different scenarios in your homeschool, no question. You're looking at that and you're saying, what is it that I need to satisfy in me? When I first say that, I want to hear, what is it that you're thinking? What's the first thought that you have when I share that thought? Because that's probably something that you need to revisit once a day. So I'd suggest put it on a timer on your phone or good old-fashioned alarm clocks and actually check in with yourself, a mindful moment to ask yourself, what are you feeling? What is going on inside of you? Why are you feeling what you're feeling? If you're not accustomed to really digging in and sitting into what is your feeling anyways, if you're not accustomed to that experience or that process, then I would recommend practicing. Because if you do it long enough, you will come to understand what's underneath that feeling. Don't be afraid of your feelings. I have been. I've been, like many people, afraid that they would consume me. But I've learned that when we don't address our feelings head on, they just get bigger. They get more intense and they get harder to understand. But when you sit with those feelings on the regular, their intensity actually decreases. Because our emotional climate is kind of like the clouds in the sky. You have a big puffy cloud on a beautiful day and it's a wonderful day. And then within a day, within a few hours, a storm comes in. for reasons we can't always predict. Sometimes we can, but storms come in, there's a cloud, and it lasts for a while, but it always moves on. That's how our feelings are. They shift quickly sometimes, and sometimes we can predict, maybe premenstrually, that we're going to have certain feelings, or certain events that happen in life will be more happy and excited. We anticipate lockdowns and we think this ain't going to be good. Our feelings are not always predictable, but they are guaranteed to pass. We don't have to be afraid of our feelings. But when we really engage in our feelings, when we really sit with them, when we actually look at them honestly and say, I can accept the fact that I have these uncomfortable feelings, that even the thoughts behind those feelings aren't always ones that I'm proud of, or I wish I didn't think that, but I do. When you can acknowledge that and accept that and be self-compassionate, then surprise, it dissipates. That's the beauty of this whole sit with it movement, is that the feelings actually dissipate. Okay, so I'm talking about some big meta concept, right? Well, I challenge you to put in your day timer once a day to check in with your feelings, with yourself, and see how do you really feel. Start dealing with that thing that keeps cropping up within your homeschool days. Identify it, start looking at it honestly. That is probably your biggest tip in dealing with boundaries in your homeschool, because you're going to recognize what your underlying needs are. And sometimes, because we're homeschool moms, we over-identify with our kids' feelings. I am that mom. And I know there are many moms like that. We do this because we genuinely want the best for our kids. And so when our kids aren't happy, we don't feel happy. We think, what can we do to make them happy? Well, sometimes we have to accept that they're other human beings. They don't always feel good. They're not always going to have this parallel line of emotional climate as we are. And sometimes they're not going to handle things as well as we are. They're not as old as us. They're in developmental stages that probably are not anywhere near as their cognitive, if they're teenagers, their prefrontal cortex isn't developed fully yet. And yet, because we're with our kids all the time and we're teaching them and engaging them and kind of helping them move in one direction, you know, this is the right way to engage, or maybe not right way, but this is a healthy approach to this. We think, well, you should do that then. You can do that now. But they're still learning, they're still growing. So as much self-compassion as you can give to yourself, give that compassion to your kids too. And recognize that their feelings are not your feelings. So all this discussion is about boundaries. What is the area of boundary that you are most challenged in your homeschool? I'll add one note that someone had mentioned to me, that they are challenged by being interrupted on the phone or in messaging by their friends and family during the homeschool day. Well, as much as this is not easy to do, it is a practice required. If you have a routine that you know is specific to your homeschool day, then just turn off the phone, turn off your notifications, let people know even. This is just so you know, I'm not going to be able to see your message or your phone call. I won't hear your phone call until after whatever o'clock. And just let it be as that. Does that mean everybody's going to be happy with you? Nope. That's not the way it works. If you set boundaries, it's almost guaranteed. If you haven't been practicing boundaries, you will have challenges with a host of people around you that don't appreciate your boundaries. But if they love you, they will stay. And if they require you to be something that you're not, it's okay. You aren't that person, so they're wanting to be with the person that isn't you anyway. Show up as you. Which brings me to the discussion that I have the most popular post on my blog that is pretty surprisingly accessed in the last few months. I suppose it's surprising. I suppose it really isn't. It's a Brené Brown discussion, how Brené Brown informs my homeschool. And if you know anything about Brené Brown, you know that I'm talking things that are definitely related to her. So check that out as well. And I frankly encourage you to go check out anything by Brené Brown, because it will absolutely build boundaries in you. And why? Because she is calling us to authenticity, to vulnerability. She's a shame researcher. What a title. She researches shame, and she had to identify her own scenario, her own story as she was researching, and it wasn't pretty, and it went viral. So she is a shame researcher that deals with vulnerability and authenticity. And I'm telling you, from my personal experience, when I first heard her TEDx talk, I don't even remember exactly what I heard that really clicked in me, that I wasn't even looking at my needs. I wasn't considering, who am I anyways as a homeschool mom? I'm frustrated with homeschooling. It's not the way I want it to be. But wait, am I actually aware of what I need in my homeschool, or how I'm engaging, or how I'm showing up in my homeschool? Am I even the person that I thought I was? I said I was this thing, this perfect homeschool mom, which by the way I wasn't, but I was thinking this is what I have to be, and I'm not showing up like that, and this is all not being, doesn't feel very good. And I discovered it was a lot about authenticity and how I wasn't really showing up for myself. She was one of my biggest influencers in shifting the boundaries inside here, which affected first my marriage, then it affected my relationships with my parents, then it affected my relationship in the church I was attending, and in my friendship and my community, and it just kept working its way out, and still to this day. Mostly it's finished, to be honest. But yesterday I got to have an amazing chat with somebody that was not Brene Brown, that was actually someone that had a giant influence on me in 2004. And I am so pleased that I got to have that chat. It was very, very big for me personally to hear him share about where he's been for the last 20 years and be able to identify with me that I've also come a long way in 20 years. Because when I sat in his office 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, I wasn't me. I wasn't the person that I was supposed to be in this earth. I was some version of what do people want me to be, and pretty mixed up and uncertain, and didn't even identify if I liked toast with honey. So you got to listen to that podcast episode next Wednesday. That one's really special to me, and I was honored to have him on there. Okay, so I have shared a lot about discussion on boundaries. Is it what you were thinking I was going to chat about? Because there's all sorts of things that we're dealing with right now. So if you have other thoughts, or you have boundary issues that you're concerned about, throw them in the comments down below, and I'm happy to respond. And I have a grappling with overwhelm checklist that you can access at the top of the Instagram page. The link is in the bio, and you can access the free checklist and watch for next week, because next week, if you're struggling with any restrictions or all of this pandemic stuff again, then I'm going to address that, because I've already been asked in another group to address how to engage all of that right now. And as you know, I haven't done a pandemic before. No, none of us have. But I know that there is a core lesson, something that we really all can use as we are having to deal with the world as it is right now. And I'm going to share more about that next week. So until next week, I hope you and your kids can turn your challenges into charms. See you next week.